Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Underground. This is the Intel update for August 11th through the 17th, 2024. So let's get right to it. Starting off with probably the most contentious topic again, let's talk about some of the more recent details involving the Trump assassination attempt. So it has been roughly a month, a little over a month since that attack was conducted in Butler, Pennsylvania. And so far, basically every day that has gone by since that assassination attempt, there has been the revelation of exceptionally sketchy details. I'm not going to cover all of the scandals or all of the sketchy details that have come out since then, or otherwise I would be here for 9 or 10 hours. But I will cover the more recent scandal, which involves the congressional task force that has been created to investigate this incident and the Secret Service response and the local law enforcement response, and essentially just investigate the whole incident. It revealed that the shooter's body has been cremated and is no longer available for examination. This was discovered by Congressman Clay Higgins, who wanted to see the body and wanted to examine it himself as part of his task force duties, I guess. And he was told that the body does not exist anymore, that the FBI released it for cremation 10 days after the attack, and just didn't bother to tell anyone. So really, I just wanted to mention this as sort of a reminder that there are going to be very, very sketchy and suspect details that are going to come out from this assassination attempt, despite the media basically just forgetting about the whole thing. It really, for me at least, highlights a little bit more of operational risk assessment and just assessment in general. I kind of hinted at this in The Wire this week, yesterday I think, but really it would probably be a good idea to slip into the mindset, or at least ask yourself the question of how much evidence do we need? How much more evidence do we need to start making decisions based on the assessment that this wasn't just some crazy guy with a rifle? That there was some level of government complacency, participation, incitement, encouragement, some level of coordination. However much that coordination is, I don't know. This is going to be debated for decades, I'm sure. However, we really should start asking ourselves, as this election gets closer, how much more evidence do we need? How much more evidence do we need to say this is suspicious, and we should probably start operating from an assumption that this was a government-sanctioned hit in some way, either directly, indirectly, encouragement, incitement, sort of thing. Again, this will be debated. I'm sure that a lot of people just outright disagree with this whole premise and just think that the official story is, the truth. Well, that's fine, I guess, but I myself am operating from a perspective of, just to be on the safe side, let's assume that this was a more significant incident than just some kid and some incompetence that resulted in a nearly successful assassination attempt. The reason that I bring this up, and the reason that I encourage to phrase it this way, is because the U.S. Secret Service incompetency continues. Incompetency, right? We have this week, we have had the revelation, which I'm surprised this has become public. Honestly, this is a personnel issue, and usually these incidents don't become public, so I'm very shocked that the Secret Service allowed this information to get out. But earlier this week, there was an incident at a Trump event in Asheville, North Carolina, where Trump was about to show up, and the Secret Service site manager was doing a sweep of all the, perimeter stations and found someone missing, found a Secret Service agent who was not standing her post. This story gets a little bit crazy. Turns out she was taking care of her child at the time and had other family members there, and they were in a secure location, not vetted. Just the list goes on. I'm sure you guys can look at all the other analysis that's kind of in the public sphere on that one. But again, not a good look for the Secret Service, especially in the wake of a nearly successful assassination attempt. So again, something also to keep in mind is the potential for other more serious things to occur. I don't want to get sucked into the trap of causation and correlation, right? I get yelled at about that enough times as is, because a lot of people try to shape the information space by saying or trying to convince you that correlation is not causation and vice versa. Well, the problem is that that whole ideology has become weaponized by the left to get you to think that your own gut feeling is not relevant. And I say that in the context of the aircraft problems that Trump's plane has had over the past, few weeks or so. We have Trump's aircraft being forced to make an emergency landing due to a mechanical issue in Montana last week, and then yesterday J.D. Vance's aircraft had a door seal problem, had to make an emergency landing. So, I don't want to put these all in kind of the same camp, but it's like you really have to think, okay, am I attributing these factors in a correct manner? Are we assessing risk in the same way? If we are going to make the assumption and operate off of the basis of this being a more substantial incident that did not go to plan, would it not also make sense to assume that malign actors, whoever they may seek to try again? It would make sense to assume that, at least from an American taxpayer perspective. I'm just an average taxpayer. I'm just some random guy on the internet. I have nothing to do with any of this. Like, my opinion doesn't matter on any of this, to be honest. But when it comes to making sure that my own community preparedness sort of mentality is taking account of all of these very important world events, it would be wise to kind of consider some of the impact these nationwide events may have. I know a lot of conjecture, not a lot of solid details that we can sink our teeth into, and as it turns out, when we do get solid details that we can sink our teeth into and we can analyze and we can war game and things like that, it turns out that it's immediately into a controversial space, and people, because it's a controversial topic and because the implications are so grand and unfathomable, it turns out that your analysis, you're just not geared to think that way. I know I'm not. I'm not geared to think, all right, well, okay, the government tried to kill, Donald Trump, so where do we go from here? That's just not an assessment line of thinking that I'm used to personally. I'm sure most Americans are not used to having these very severe and dire things on the table, but I think that it would probably be a good idea to, from a rational, as informed as possible perspective, start considering the more serious implications of this. What do we do? Well, how do we shape? How does this shape our worldview? How does this shape our daily operating procedure? Assume for a moment, just wargaming things. Assume for a moment that this was some sort of CIA operation or influenced by the FBI or something like that. Assume for a moment that this was known ahead of time and that this was a coordinated effort to target Trump by, government agencies. Well, let's just assume that's true for a moment. What do we do about it? They just barely failed. So, what do we do about it? Well, how does the average American process this? Now, this assessment being now on the table and being a decently likely theory, not just some kind of fringe crazy idea. This is like a mainstream idea. Well, all right. What do we do? What do we do about it? I don't know. I don't know how to factor that in, other than just realizing that I personally am willing to take less risk in some areas and a little bit more risk in others. Just when it comes to my everyday life sort of thing. So, yeah, I think I've talked enough on that. So let's go ahead and move on to the Southeast region. And this is probably one of the more wacky tales this week. This is the National Public Data Leak. Now, normally I wouldn't really care this much about data leaks because, well, really ever since the OPM scandal a few years ago, and I got my letter and framed it, that basically my entire life had been leaked by the federal government. Data leaks aren't really that interesting to me. They're very serious, but not that interesting. This one's interesting. Mostly because it's from a private company that is just the most sketchy agency ever. Let me just cut right to the chase. When I heard about this and I looked up this company, National Public Data, my alarm bells immediately started ringing off, and I immediately came to the conclusion, CIA cutout. Basically a front for some federal intelligence collection agency. However, once I started digging a little bit more, and trust me, this is probably one of the deepest rabbit holes I've found lately. I don't think so. I think it's sketchy, but I don't. I mean, maybe the CIA is this dumb these days. I don't know. But it seems like it's just weird. So let me explain a little bit. A few days ago, it became public that roughly 2.7 to 2.9 billion records involving potentially hundreds of millions of American citizens was leaked, and it popped up on the dark web. Why is this important? Well, usually when there's a big data breach or something of this magnitude, potentially involving hundreds of millions of Americans alive and dead, the company will come out with a big whoops email and explain their oopsie sort of situation. In this case, that didn't happen. So how do we find out about this leak? Well, it turns out a lot of people got notices from those dark web monitoring services that sometimes banks will offer, sometimes credit card companies will offer, sometimes VPNs will offer it, I guess. But basically, these dark web monitors that you'll sometimes see, I think antivirus companies sometimes offer this. Essentially, it's just companies or the provider monitoring these dark web sites where ransomware, like ransoms, are posted to see if your data is there. Now, in the past, I've been very highly skeptical of these because they don't usually work, because most of the time you need to pay the ransom to see if your data has been breached. So it's kind of a misnomer. Well, in this case, it did work. Why did it work? Well, because a cyber group known as USDOD, ironically, breached this company, National Public Data. And one of the guys in that group leaked just openly for free 2.7 billion of those records. So they were open and in the clear, which is why all of these dark web monitor sites actually worked and picked up that data and issued an alert to a lot of customers saying, hey, your data's on the dark web. They do a little bit of an investigation and find out, wait a minute, it's from this company, National Public Data, and we're not customers of National Public Data. So the rabbit hole gets a little deeper, doesn't it? People do a little bit of investigating, do a little bit of digging, and find out that this National Public Data, which is like a database accessing platform that sells access to varying background check databases for background checks to be like propagated. So for instance, when you Google like free background check, a lot of the data that pops up comes from this platform, this company. So that's how this sort of came about. National Public Data did not notify anyone that their data had been breached. This one company just sort of let it go, and people found out from the actual cyber group, yeah, this data has been leaked by National Public Data, and they didn't tell you guys. So why did they not do this? Why is this like the shadiest story ever? So going down the rabbit hole a little further, we find out that, okay, this National Public Data website, company, shell corporation, something like that, is a little sketchy. And some of the databases that they have had access to and some of the data that they have included in their background check like services might have been obtained illegally. You can read the lawsuit yourself, because obviously there's a class action lawsuit against this company now. And they don't really come out and say it directly, but there's the insinuation that this company had access to databases that are not public. How or why is this a factor? Well, let's look into National Public Data. If you do about 30 seconds worth of Googling, you can find out this is probably the sketchiest company in human existence. First of all, it is owned, operated, the registered agent is, and everything is one guy. This guy, Mr. Salvatore Verini. Now, again, I don't normally like to put so much credence in just one guy, obviously, but he's really the only guy that's associated with this massive company that does these massive background checks. So you do a little bit of digging, and you find out it just gets weirder the more you look into it. This guy is sort of like a Neil Breen, Steven Seagal kind of guy, and he's like an actor. He's like a C-list or D-list actor who has got his own production company called Jericho Pictures. Of course, Jericho being spelled incorrectly. You do a little bit of digging and you find out, okay, he's got multiple websites, all of this linked to National Public Data. So he's got his acting, filmmaking, cinematography company, right? It looks just like a shell company, but I don't think it is. I think it actually is this dude. Doing not acting or producing or any sort of Hollywood, cinematography. He's doing background checks with it. So it's like you've got this guy registering his company down in Miami, and he's listed on IMDb as like an actor. I think he was actually even in a few like big action movies. But you go to his website and it's just weird, like really weird headshots of himself. And there's just all these links to background check services. So it's not just National Public Data. He's got a bunch of other URLs and websites from like the past where he's done some similar stuff. So you do a little bit of digging, you go down the rabbit hole a little further just out of morbid curiosity and find out this guy is a retired sheriff's deputy working for Broward County. So it starts to come into play. This guy's literally like a Steven Seagal wannabe, or at least it seems like. I don't mean to like put the guy down or anything, but it sure seems like that. He's a retired deputy running an acting company where he does like 80s sort of, action movies, but he's still tied into law enforcement loosely with, offering a very large background check service that is questionable of how it got its data. Do you see where we're going with this? Again, a lot of this is just pure rumor and conjecture, and there's not a whole lot of like solid details on any of this. Because National Public Data, this guy, is obviously not cooperating with any of this. So he's not responding to any group. The hacking group that has literally leaked this stuff, that hacked these guys, has provided more data and has been more helpful to like magazines and websites from like in the tech sector who have like reached out to the hacking group for more details. The hacking group has been more helpful than this guy has. So you can see this is a very, very interesting one. His website's down. His personal website's still up, but a lot of the links don't work. It just screams CIA cutout. But the more that I look into it, I think there's no way they're this incompetent. Maybe they are. I don't know. Things have changed a lot over the past few years, but I don't know. It just seems very, very sketchy all around that this guy running a website from like an apartment in Miami can have the social security numbers of every human being in America who has ever lived, like, or had it in an Excel spreadsheet. The actual raw files that the hacking group like leaked, these 2.7 billion records, you can tell that it's 2.7 billion, but literally even my computer is not big enough to parse this data to even open the files. So, like, I don't know how many Americans are affected. Is it 2.7 billion individual records? Probably not. It's probably not 2.7 billion Americans. That's probably ridiculous. But you have to remember how background check companies work. They're all based on links. So if you investigate, you can go onto these like free websites, free background check, put your own name in, and you'll see people that you know. And because of the whole 6 degrees of separation thing, you could probably get to a few billion Americans decently quickly. In this case, I don't think that's it. I think it's probably affecting just every American that's got a social security number, and there's a lot of duplicates. That's my guess. But again, the data is just so much data coming from this guy's apartment in Miami. You got to wonder, like, how did it get there? So anyway, I thought this was very interesting. There's probably going to be very little information come out about this because, there's a lawsuit involved. I don't know if there's a criminal investigation going on. There probably should be, but I don't know. How did this guy get all this data, and how did this all work? Did he just invent some software that scraped, the public data out there? I highly doubt it, but maybe. I don't know. I should also note that it doesn't seem to be everyone. It seems to be fairly outdated data because, I put myself in. I checked myself to see if I was on the list, and I wasn't, which is strange. And I know a lot of other people who deliberately were victims of the OPM breach from years ago. They're not on the list either. So I don't know. It's very strange. How can you have this many records of people I mean, if it makes sense to there'd be this many records of people, but how could you not have people that were known to be part of the OPM breach? That information has been in the open space for years now. So I don't know. It's very interesting though. So not a whole lot of value there, other than just to remind people, like, you may want to like read those emails from your bank that say, oh, here we're offering free credit checks or free credit monitoring for a certain period of time. The class action lawsuit is trying to get this dude to pay for it. Just looking at his IMDb page, I don't think he's going to be able to cash out, if you know what I mean. So either way, it doesn't seem like there's probably going to be a whole lot of recouping from this, because this isn't a multi-billion-dollar bank. This isn't a multi-billion-dollar government agency. This is just one guy in an apartment in Miami. So, he docks the planet, and basically I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of recouping from that. So you may be on your own there, but in any case, quite interesting. Also, of note, moving out west, I will briefly mention this because people just keep messaging me on this, so I'll just talk about it for a second. They're trying to push monkeypox again. I don't think anybody watching this believes this story, and we all really know why monkeypox didn't really take off the last time as the next scheduled pandemic, because of the people who were getting monkeypox, if you know what I mean. I am very skeptical that monkeypox is going to be the next just-in-time virus for the election, simply because of the people that are getting it. I mean, right now, I don't know. See, right now the media is just kind of tripping over itself to talk about monkeypox and the latest strains. So there are some media websites that say there are cases in America. There are other media websites that say there aren't any. The most recent reason this is in the news is because San Francisco came out and said that they have detected monkeypox in 2 parts of the city. So, well, first of all, of course it would be San Francisco. Second of all, San Francisco has been monitoring for monkeypox since this sort of became a thing back in, like 2020? So, yeah, I don't know if they're talking about the latest strain. San Francisco authority, like, you could find media articles talking about how monkeypox has been detected in the wastewater supply of San Francisco for years at semi-regular levels. So, I don't know. Are they going to try to push this as being the next lockdown thing? I don't know, maybe. But the problem with monkeypox is, well, who contracts it? It's not exactly, you don't exactly trip and fall and accidentally get monkeypox, you know what I mean? So, it's not something that you could put a mask on to prevent, So it's one of those things where the transmission vectors and the people who are getting it make for a very politically challenging narrative shaping operation. So I think it's going to be hard to push. It would be easier to push COVID again, I think. But, I mean, they may. But I don't think they want to draw as much attention to monkeypox or mpox now. I don't think they want to draw as much attention to that as people might want to think. So I'm not freaking out about it. I don't really care. And I don't really think that it's going to be impactful for a large percentage of the population. So, I did want to mention it because people keep telling me about it. I know that they're trying to push this again. I don't think it really matters too much, though. So let's go ahead and move on to the United Kingdom. Again, quite a bit going on over there. Most of the violence over the past week, as far as I can tell, has mostly been from counter-protests and Islamic gangs that have started to get a lot more powerful and get a lot more bold in their targeting of random people. So, again, the UK, specifically England and Northern Ireland, have gotten a lot of problems right now. Not so much Scotland, from what I can see. It seems to me like Scotland has been kind of isolated from a lot of this so far. There have been demonstrations. I have seen a few, but nothing really major. Most of the kinetic stuff's come from England down south. Really, mostly up in Sunderland, Southport. There have been quite a few riots in London as well over the past few days, but the riots are not from the traditionally the indigenous English population, the Anglo-Saxons, right? It's not from those people. It's really just from the leftists and Islamic gangs that are rioting down there. So, hard to kind of pin things down. I will mention though, in the Republic of Ireland, things are heating up pretty significantly. Especially considering there was a Catholic priest that was stabbed in the Galway barracks, the Rinmore barracks in Galway, which there's a small chapel there, so that's my guess as to why he was there. But yeah, not super great. Ireland is investigating this as a terror attack, so I don't know. It seems a lot of the local media there are saying that the priest was not dressed in religious attire, but he was dressed in civilian attire. So it seems to me like this may be a more targeted incident. I can't say for sure. The details are really sketchy. You know how things go. If there's a person of Middle Eastern descent involved in any of these attacks, the media lockdown is just instant, right? So again, very few details. However, across the way in Dublin, there have been a lot of riots over this. And in Northern Ireland, things have gotten really kinetic, especially in Belfast, which again is not entirely out of the norm. However, it does seem like things are heating up. So it's really hard to kind of nail down exactly what this violence is all about. Mostly it's about immigration, but it could be for other like more long-standing issues. But I think most of the violence throughout the Republic of Ireland, throughout Northern Ireland, throughout Northern England as well, is almost entirely about immigration, and mostly the government response to it. So again, not a super great time for the United Kingdom and Ireland as well, but we'll definitely have to keep an eye on things because the arrests and the imprisonment of people for just speaking their mind and not saying anything violent, not saying anything horrifically bad, just saying they disagree with the government policy. People are getting years in prison for this, and other people, immigrants who are literally murdering people are getting out after a few months. So I don't think anyone expected for things to have gotten this bad this quickly, but I truly don't think the United Kingdom government has understood what they have done. So again, indications and warnings keep stacking up, and even though Americans probably don't care what happens in England land, it would probably be a good idea to pay attention because these people are learning. And a lot of the lessons that they're learning are probably going to be very applicable here in the United States because, newsflash, the United Kingdom is not the only country in the world that has a two-tier justice system. We have it here in the U.S. too, so something to consider as time goes on. So wrapping things up today with the intercepted GhostNet reports, there have been a lot of use of the GhostNet over the past couple of weeks. Sorry I didn't highlight last week, so I was too busy talking about the UK. This time around, I got a lot. Propagation has been pretty decent, for at least for the East Coast. I don't know about the West Coast so much. But I did get a lot of local news reports, a lot of people testing things out, discovering features they didn't know about in JS8 calls, so pretty good stuff. Just as kind of a brief heads up, I'm going to have version 1.5 of the GhostNet out, hopefully decently soon. I always hate to talk about impending projects because things always take longer than I thought they would, but I should have version 1.5 out and a couple of videos to go with it pretty soon. You shouldn't need to reprint anything. You should just be able to print out the new pages, but this should incorporate some things for the non-HF licensed personnel. So for people who want to get involved with this, to have some sort of last-ditch emergency comms plan, this should help you out a little bit more, even if you're not into the whole HF radio stuff. So still working on that. Don't really have high hopes for how effective it'll be, but I am going to implement it anyway, just because, whatever. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have for today. Here are, of course, the sources like usual. I think this coming week I'm going to have a lot of long wire reports just because, well, things just tend to be kind of getting out of hand. Things get a little busy this time of year, I guess. In the months leading up to every election season, it's just going to be a trend of wire reports just getting longer and longer every day. But in any case, we'll get back at it on Monday, and we'll see what we have to talk about and see what this next coming week brings. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.